Hi everybody and welcome to Out of the Gate, Daily Racing Form's weekend handicapping preview program. I'm Dan Ullman. Thanks so much for watching. Here's what's coming up in this week's edition of Out of the Gate. If you like Kentucky Derby preps, this edition of Out of the Gate is for you. We've got three of them. The Grade 2 Tampa Bay Derby, of course, at Tampa Bay Downs. The Grade 3 Gotham Stakes, a one-turn mile at Aqueduct. The Grade 3 Jeff Ruby Stakes is our main entree at Turfway Park. DRF Handicappers, Mike Beer, Matt Bernier, and I will handicap those three races. Nicole Russo's Pedigree Pick segment focuses on the Gotham, as does Craig Milkowski's Timeform US Pace Projector. David Aragona, also of Timeform US, he spotlights the Tampa Bay Derby. Plus best bets, horses to watch, and lots more. So let's break Out of the Gate. We begin Out of the Gate with our Horse Watch segment. Mike Beer, Naira analyst, not a lot of things going on in New York right now. You went down to Gulfstream for your Horse Watch this week. Yeah, last Sunday, Personal Time made his turf debut for Shug McGahee. This horse is a full brother to Derby winner Orb, but his dirt form was only so he finished second in half of his starts. He couldn't quite get there at the end. But on turf, he does get there at the end. This is his turf debut, as I said before, 9 furlongs on the grass. They went a very modest pace in front of this horse. The third and fourth quarters, the quarters he's rallying into, are the fastest of the race, but it's no problem for this horse. He's going to close this field down. I like the way he finished it off. You can see it's sort of strong handling at the end of this race. He's going to get up. I like the finish he put in. I think this horse is a new horse on turf. I love the way he was reaching out for ground at the end of this race. You know these Shug horses, they seem to get better with age and maturity. Matt, if you're looking for concrete evidence of a good horse, look no further than your Horse Watch, who just buried the field at Laurel last time out.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens with this horse. His name is Hoffa's Union. He's only started once in his career. He's a 3-year-old gelding. You see this right now. The race is over at this point. He goes off and wins by more than 15 lengths, earns a 94 buyer and a 118 Timeform US rating. Private purchase out of this race now goes into Mark Cassie's barn, and you've heard some things, some rumblings about the possibility of his next start being potentially the Florida Derby or the Wood Memorial. They're clearly going to throw him into the deep end to see what they've got, and based on figs, I don't think I can blame him.
My horse not as impressive as those of Matt and Mike, but I thought he ran well within the context of his race, and that's Bourbon Cowboy, who made his second start of 2019 for trainer Robertino Diodoro and an optional claimer at Oaklawn Park. We see him 3 wide splitting horses. He wasn't the story of this race. The story of this race was the return to the races of the brilliant Steve Asmussen-trained sprinter Mitoli, who just got away with an easy early lead. Bourbon Cowboy was last early, mid-moved into contention on the turn, and was very game to finish second. It seems like these sprint races at Oaklawn are very competitive. This was Bourbon Cowboy's second start at Oaklawn this meet. The first time he caught class-dropping Heartwood, who we know is graded stakes caliber on his best day. Diodoro claimed this horse for $50,000 at Oaklawn last year, and he ended up winning a stakes race at Canterbury and ended up being multiple stakes placed throughout the Mid and Southwest. I think this horse is better now than he was when he was first claimed by Diodoro, and I think he can make hay over the summertime at tracks like Canterbury and Prairie Meadows. He's an interesting long-term option for those sort of listed stakes races. Keep an eye out for the 7-year-old gelding, Bourbon Cowboy. No match for Mitoli, but I think he gets a class drop in the future. Let's get to some handicapping. The DRF Bets race of the day, the Tampa Bay Derby. Let's take a look at the field for Saturday's DRF Bets race of the day. It is the Tampa Bay Derby, one of 3 Kentucky Derby qualifying points preps on Saturday. Carded is race number 11 at Tampa Bay Downs. $400,000 is the purse for this Grade 2. For expanded stakes previews of many of the major races all weekend long and lots more, visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Matt, you have Mark Cassie involved with your Horse Watch. You like Mark Cassie in the Tampa Bay Derby.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I probably would have made this horse a best bet for me if we weren't going over this as a stakes preview. So Dreammaker, he's just the kind of horse for me that checks all the boxes. I liked him early on as a 2-year-old. We're actually going to look at one of his 2-year-old races. This was from up at Saratoga. Visually, it really wasn't all that impressive. I didn't think he did a heck of a lot of running in the hopeful. But I think you've got reason to believe that the Breeders' Futurity, you can just draw a line through that simply because he had a terrible situation getting out of the gate, got pinched between, just basically a non-effort. They gave him some time, brought him back most recently at the Fairgrounds on February the 9th. He went out there and blitzed a pretty decent field. He won by more than 8.5 lengths. And then the runner-up, all he did was come back and win next out with an 87 Beyer speed figure, sort of validating that performance. I have to be honest with you, Dreammaker to me at 3-1 or greater, he's going to be worth a big win bet.
Mike, you're looking for a little bit of a better price, a very lightly raced horse, but one with a nice pedigree, a son of Quality Road out of a half to Fed Biz.
Yeah, Fed Biz is on the dam side, as is the very good Tail of the Cat. This is a big pedigree on the bottom of this horse. And I just wanted a price in this race. We're looking at his 3-year-old debut here. This is off a bit of a layoff at Gulfstream. You're going to see him get in between horses. I don't think he was winning this race, but he does get into a little bit of trouble here. He has to back out of that spot. I like that he comes back on gamely again at the end of this race. And I just feel like maybe this was a race he needed. I really liked his debut at Aqueduct at the end of last year. He had some speed in that race. I liked the way he finished in the final eighth of a mile. I like his pedigree. And this is just the kind of race where I didn't really want to show a price on anybody. I'll take a shot with this horse.
I'm not sure I'm going to get the price that you two guys are going to receive, but I might have the most naturally talented horse in the race. And that is the number 7, Win, Win, Win. And all he does is win, win, win on fast tracks. A perfect 3 for 3 on them, including this gigantic performance in the 7 furlong Pasco Stakes at Tampa Bay. As he did in the Heft Stakes at Laurel, he was a little bit slow coming out of the gate. And it takes him a while to find his stride, but he's swept widest on the turn and is just drawing away with absolute authority to win with a 99 Beyer speed figure. Now, while he does have to stretch out around 2 turns for the first time, he has enough middle distance pedigree that makes me believe he will get the mile in a 16th, and he is such a strong bodied individual. I think physically a mile in a 16th won't be an issue as well. The gait is the key. He has to break. If he does, I think he works a second flight trip and he'll be running late. He's a talented horse, win, win, win. We'll see if he's another World of Trouble, a horse that they tried to stretch out in Tampa Bay last year and ended up as a strong sprinter, or a bona fide Derby contender in the Tampa Bay Derby. Speaking of Derby preps, we've got Nicole Russo, we've got Craig Milkowski. They'll talk about these 3-year-old races from a pedigree and pace perspective, respectively.
Hey everyone, Nicole Russo coming to you from Lexington, Kentucky, and this weekend we'll be a little north of here off the highway in Florence, Kentucky for Turfway Park's biggest card of the meet. You're looking at the field for the Grade 3 Jeff Ruby, which offers 20 Kentucky Derby points to the winner, the headline event of 5 stakes on this card. Now, in this field, you've got a few horses who will be trying a synthetic surface for the first time. I'm going to look at a couple of those who do have some turf and synthetic type breeding and who might offer some value in this spot. And 5-Star General, who I believe is the 3rd choice on the morning line, is one of those. He's won a pair of off-the-turf races, including this win in the Central Park at Aqueduct. So the turf intent was there with him. He's getting on a synthetic surface for the first time after finishing 6th in the Sam Davis at Tampa Bay. He's by classic sire Distorted Humor out of a winning Bernardini mare, and both his wins have come at a mile, so the stamina is there. His dam is a half-sister to Criminologist, a graded stakes winner on the turf. That mare in turn produced turf-graded winner Inspector Linley, and this is the family of Carriage Trail, who was a Grade 1 winner on Polytrack when Keeneland had that surface. Now, another one in this field, Curlin Gray, broke his maiden on the Gulfstream dirt, although in a maiden claimer, before coming back to run 3rd in an allowance optional there, behind the well-regarded Global Campaign and Standard Deviation. He is, of course, by Curlin, who ran very well in his lone start on turf against a pair of Breeders' Cup winners and was 4th in the 2008 Breeders' Cup Classic on synthetic, a creditable effort at the end of his career when I did think maybe he was losing a step. Curlin by the outstanding multi-purpose sire Smart Strike, who of course is the sire of some turf and Canadian champions. Curlin a stamina influence, and his foals who have gotten a chance to run on other surfaces have shown that they can transfer that stamina over. Dixie Moon won the Woodbine Oaks just last year on Woodbine's synthetic track by a head over Wunter Godot. Curlin also the sire of graded winners on turf, including Texas Rhino, Diversey Harbor, Moulin de Mugen, and Current. Curlin Gray gets some backup from the female family as he's out of Surflight, a stakes winner routing on the turf. Well, we're taking you through all of this weekend's action on Out of the Gate. And next up, we'll get you over to Craig for a closer look at some of the action with the Timeform US Pace Projector.
Hi, I'm Craig Mulkowski at Timeform US for this week's Pace Projector segment on Out of the Gate. Today I chose the Grade 3 Gotham Stakes being run as the 10th race Saturday at Aqueduct as our highlight race. And I chose it because it's a race projected by the Timeform US Pace Projector to have a fast pace. I like to look at the preview page and you can get an idea of why we see it has a fast pace. We have 3 horses listed with a Timeform US running style of speed, and then we have another 3 listed of tracker. It's only a field size of 8, so 6 of our 8 horses have shown a propensity to be up on or near the lead early. And that's kind of why the pace projector feels the pace will be fast. You'll notice in the abbreviated version of the pace projector, we have the C details highlighted in red. We're going to look at that a little closer in a second. But you can see 2 of the horses aren't shown on there, and those are clearly the 2 that are not part of the pace. Now let's move on to take a closer look at that pace projector, and here you can see the whole field. You'd also see if there were any notes, like if we had some foreign horses that weren't included or if some horses were adding blinkers. And one other side note about why this race was chosen as having a fast pace, we do look at the running styles, we look at field things like field size, which was not a factor here, but we also look at how competitive the early lead's going to be. And you can see here we have a tightly bunched group. We have 3 right shown at the front and the other 3 sitting just off of them. So now let's take a look at some of the horses I don't particularly like as they're going to be part of the pace according to the pace projector. And we'll start with number 2, Knicks Go. Knicks Go was the runner-up in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile this year. I broke from an outside post, and he ran quite well. He was part of a fast pace. He took the lead. He wasn't able to hold on eventual winner and 2-year-old champion game winner. But he ran solid, got a nice 1:12 Timeform US speed figure, but he hasn't quite been the same since. He did have a bit of an excuse next time out where he once again drew a wide post. He was part of a much faster pace that day. You can see the fractions highlighted in red. But he just didn't have much. He quit and was beaten by 18 lengths. But even if you draw a line through that one, I would say his last one, Tampa, the Sam Davis Stakes, once again he pressed the pace. This time it wasn't particularly fast, and he readily backed out of it again. So you'd have to have some faith if you like Knicks Go here, and that he's going to be able to revert to his form from the Breeders' Cup and previously when he upset the Breeders' Futurity at Keeneland. But I don't see it, so I think he'll be a pace factor, but I'm going to toss him. The next horse that is projected up near the lead is 6 Instagram. He's an interesting horse. He's the even money favorite on the morning line, and I have no problems with the morning line, unlike last week. If anything, he may get bet a little heavier, a little less, but I think it's pretty spot on. The interesting thing with him is that he's first time going longer than 6 furlongs. He hasn't run, as we highlight the exact number of days, 210 days, but since August the 11th. And some other things he's got, both of his races, he obviously won very easy by over 10 lengths. But you know, at Timeform US, we have the pace figures for both of those races coded in blue. He was a heavy favorite. He was no secret in his debut. He easily won the Best Pal Stakes. But that slow pace means he was never really challenged. He wasn't asked for much. So we really don't know what we have in Instagram. It could be very well he's a star in the making, but at the given short price, I think there's way too many questions to bet on him, and I'm even willing to take a stand against him, as we'll see. The other speed horse I wanted to talk about was Not That Brady. He's interesting because he has a 1:20 Timeform US speed figure last out that he earned in the Withers, a race that came back very fast. I am a little iffy on that speed figure. It was a tough day at Aqueduct. The horses jumped up, but according to the clock, it was a fast race. But regardless, even if I believe that figure, I wouldn't be a big fan of Not That Brady here for a couple reasons. You can see he really has turned the corner. He was claimed early in his career, but he's a horse who likes to get the lead. He's had some easy open in leads. Despite what the pace is, it's always good to be clear, and he's been clear quite a bit here. His last 4 races, he's all had clear leads. He did hang on to win a couple of them against lesser competition. But what concerns me more here is the turn back. You'll note the Withers was that rare race that, even though it was early in February, it was run at 1 1/8, around 2 turns at Aqueduct. And obviously, it's cutting back to a 1-turn mile here. So it's going to be much tougher. You have to run faster to get the lead at that 1-turn mile than you do at 1 1/8. So I'm skeptical he's going to be the same horse cutting back and facing more pressure. It wouldn't shock me if he ran well, but he's another one I'm going to be against. The horse that I am going to go with here is number 5, High Cow. He's stretching out, first time at 1 mile. All his races have been 1-turn miles at Aqueduct. But 2 of the 3, I think he ran his best races, definitely on speed figures at 7 furlongs than he did at 6. But even at 6, he made up a whole lot of ground to get the win. You can see he was 7 lengths back with a half mile to go, with a 1/4 mile to go, and even 6.5 lengths back with just a furlong to go in that race, and he was able to make up the ground. So I'm not too concerned about the mile here. Of course, it's a question mark, but he's going to be a price horse in here after looking at the other 3, and I'm willing to take that risk. So my selection here is going to be number 5, High Cow, to take the Gotham Stakes on Saturday at Aqueduct. That's it for this week's Timeform US Pace Projector segment on Out of the Gate, and I'll see you next week.
Are you a horse player looking to raise your game? For over 120 years, expert handicappers have relied on Daily Racing Form as their must-have source for news and data, featuring exclusive buyer speed figures, Timeform US pace figures, and integrated replays. DRF Formulator is the most powerful handicapping tool on the market today. Use what the pros use. Go to drf.com/formulator and enter code DRFTV to get your first card free. drf.com. Raise your game.
Welcome back to Out of the Gate. Let's throw up the field for the 1-turn, 1 mile Gotham Stakes, a Kentucky Derby qualifying point prep at Aqueduct on Saturday. $300,000 is the purse for this Grade 3. For expanded stakes previews of all the major stakes races this weekend, head on over to video.drf.com. You get lots more there as well as on the YouTube channel for Daily Racing Form, including our Gotham Card webinar with Mike Beard, David Aragona, and myself. Mike, Instagram, even money on the morning line based on 2 sparkling efforts as a 2-year-old in Southern California for Jerry Hollendorfer. Isn't this just a humongous ask, though? Long layoff, shipping across the country, stretching out for the first time in a race with a load of speed?
Yeah, there's other speed for him to deal with in this race for sure. Nobody in this field, let's be perfectly clear about this, nobody in this field has run as well as this horse has on the racetrack yet, though. So we'll just see if the layoff gets to this horse. I have no problem with anybody who wants to stand against him in this race. We're looking at the most recent start for him, the Best Pal Grade 2. This is what it's basically a carbon copy of his debut. He let some horses sit up alongside him early, and then he left him for dead at the top of the stretch and aired on these 2 fields. This horse looked like the real thing as a 2-year-old. It's rarely a good idea to just stop on a horse for no apparent reason. That's what they did on Instagram. So that's a concern, as is the layoff. But if he comes back as good at 3 as he was at 2, this field might be in big trouble.
Matt, it might be as simple as Bob Baffert yet again in a 3-year-old race, only this time you get a much better price.
That's kind of the way that I looked at this. Instagram is probably the most likely winner of this race. I shouldn't even say probably. He is the most likely winner of this race, but much better. Look, when's the last time you got 10-1 on Baffert and Smith in New York? This horse, I think there's probably an issue with the distance, let's be honest. He shortened badly 2 starts back in the Sham. You're taking a look right now, though, at a most recent run at 6.5 furlongs, his first time in blinkers. He buried this field. I can understand anyone that looks at it and says from a number standpoint, he's just not good enough to run with the best in here. But again, at 10-1, this is more a connection play than anything else.
I'm going to go with one of the 2 Grade 1 winners in this field, and that is the number 3, Mind Control, who won the Hopeful last year at Saratoga. He missed his final prep for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. That was the Breeders' Futurity at Keeneland, a race he missed with an elevated temperature. He didn't run well in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Nice to see him bounce back with this performance, however, on New Year's Day in the Jerome, where he took some pace heat in the early portion of this race, and then he just dug down deep. This was reminiscent of his performance in in the hopeful, where he just kept finding more and more and more. They were going to run him in the 1 1/8 Withers after this performance, and I think his trainer Greg Sacco wisely realized that this horse's forte is one-turn miles, and that's what he's going to get in the Gotham. The major concern is his big races have come when he is on the lead, and with all the other speed in this race, I'm not sure he can make the lead, but he's professional and classy, and I think John Velasquez might be able to work out a second flight trip while saving ground, and then we'll see if Mind Control is good enough to deal with the likes of the brilliant Instagrand. We'll move from dirt to synthetic, from New York to Kentucky. The Jeff Ruby Stakes is coming up next. Let's dig right into the Jeff Ruby Stakes by taking a look at the field for this Kentucky Derby qualifying point prep race at 1 1/8 on the Polytrack surface at Turfway Park, carded as race number 11. $200,000 is the purse. For expanded stakes previews, visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Mike, lots of times in these synthetic races, you're looking for horses with turf pedigrees. 5-Star General's got a little bit of a turf pedigree as he makes his synthetic debut. He's by Distorted Humor out of a half to the good turf runner Criminologist.
Yeah, I don't think I'll worry about the surface switch for him in this race. I think it's more important to decide whether you think he's going to be able to get to the lead, because I feel like he wants to be on the front, and then perhaps maybe whether the 9 furlongs is too far for him. We're going to look at a replay of his win 2 starts back. This is at Aqueduct in a 1-turn mile. It's a scheduled turf race that was rained off to the main track. He just got right to the front here. He got loose on the lead. He had this entire field working hard behind him. You know, personally, I didn't think he finished this race off very well. It doesn't seem like he really wants to go much further than this. And of course, his next start in the Sam Davis at 1/16, he didn't run well. Maybe this is a better spot for him. I'm very concerned about how far this horse wants to go, though, guys.
It'll be interesting to see what kind of pace situation he encounters in here. I think he will be close to the pace going into the first turn. Matt, your top selection in here, the morning line favorite, Some Like It Hot Brown, already familiar with the Turfway Park course. He won the local prep, the John Battaglia. Michael Maker wanted him covered up in that race, and that's exactly what happened until the rail opened up.
I was going to say, we can throw up the replay of that race right now. Like you say, he was down, buried inside, and then all of a sudden, the rail just completely opened for him. And look, when the best horse gets a trip like that, when things end up working out nicely, it's going to be tough to beat him. To me, this was very much just a starting off point, a means to an end. I think this horse, there's potential that he has improved dramatically from 2 to 3. The figures may not back that up, but I thought this was a visually very impressive performance.
Yeah, I agree with Matt 100%. I think if nothing else, at least you found out that this surface switch was no problem for him. He won that race very easily. And, you know, it's not like the race came out of nowhere, guys. His turf graded stakes form as a 2-year-old was very, very good. In a lot of ways, he just towers over this field right now.
I'm going to take a shot with the number 6, Skywire, who won his career debut over a synthetic surface, albeit the Tapeta surface, at Woodbine. It was a very impressive debut, and the sharp owner Gary Barber bought part of this horse after the race. They sent him down to Gulfstream, and he won an off-the-turf race over a sealed, sloppy track, but he won very, very easily. He's still a little bit green. You see when a rat hits him left-handed in mid-stretch that he drifts outward, but he steadies himself pretty quickly and goes on about his business. The runner-up Art G is back, returned to run a decent 4th in a graded stakes race on turf last week at Gulfstream. This is another horse with a big turf pedigree from the family of Sky Classic, and being an Ontario bred, Mark Cassidy has already mentioned a race like the Queen's Plate is the ultimate goal for Skywire, so he should fit on this synthetic surface. He's lightly raced with some upside. I think Skywire is going to get some pace to attack in the Jeff Ruby Stakes. David Aragona's Timeform U.S. Spotlight focuses on the Tampa Bay Derby, and then we'll be back with our best bets for Saturday.
Hi everyone, I'm David Aragona with this week's Timeform US Spotlight. I'm going to take a look at the Tampa Bay Derby on Saturday at Tampa Bay Downs, one of the 2 major preps being contested this weekend. And this race drew an interesting field of 11 runners. It's led by Well Defined and Win Win Win, who are coming off local wins at Tampa, but there are a bunch of horses trying to step up in class and really earn some valuable points on the road to the Kentucky Derby. I want to go straight to the Timeform US Pace Projector to check out the pace of this race, because it's an interesting discussion how this race is going to be run, and you see that that red bar where we are predicting a fast pace to develop. And number 11, Zendin, is the horse that is predicted to be on the early lead. No surprise that he's coming out of a race like the Swell where they set such a fast pace. And he didn't make the lead that day, but he was running extremely fast fractions chasing that swift early pace. And he is likely to be sent from his outside post position in this race. And that could spell trouble for Well Defined, who has been most effective when he's able to be on the lead, as he was last time out in the Sam F. Davis. And it's going to be interesting to see how aggressive they have to be with Well Defined if they're intent on making the front with him. Horses that could benefit from the pace if it gets really hot up front are potentially Win, who's the number 7, who should be somewhere in mid-pack, as well as closing types like the Mark Casse pair, Sir Winston, and Dreammaker. We'll start by taking a look at Win, who is likely to be the favorite in this race. He's stretching out around 2 turns for the first time after running 4 excellent races sprinting. And it really depends on what you make of his win in the Pasco Stakes last time, because he was extremely visually impressive that day. He rated well off the pace, made a sweeping run around the far turn, and just continued to widen through the lane while setting a track record. He earned a 1:21 Timeform US speed figure, which is by far the highest number in the field. And I think the question when you're analyzing the figure for that race is how predictive is it going to be moving forward? Because we've already seen a few horses run back out of that race. They haven't really duplicated it. Some of it run significantly worse in subsequent starts. So we really don't know if that is a true figure moving forward. But prior to that, Win had earned some numbers like a 109 2-back win behind Always Mining and the Heft with some trouble at the start that day, and a 111 prior to that. So we know he's a fast horse already. I'm not going to be shocked if he runs a race fast enough to beat these horses. It's just, can he translate that form to 2 turns? Because his pedigree is a little bit ambiguous. There is some sprint pedigree on the dam side. I don't know what to make of the fact that his sire Hat Trick has a dirt horse, because Hat Trick is really more of a turf sire in general. There's some stamina in the second family of the female generation, but I'm just not really totally convinced that I want to take this horse at a short price, though I do respect his talent. I like him a little bit more than Well Defined, who's likely to be the second choice in this race, and Well Defined just had everything go right for him in the Sam F. Davis. There are a bunch of horses that look to be speeds in that race that just didn't quite show the amount of early speed that they're able to do, and Well Defined was just able to sneak loose on the front end and set a relatively moderate pace. I mean, it wasn't color-coded blue or anything like that, but they were not taxing fractions for a naturally fast horse like this, and he just snuck away around the far turn, opened up an insurmountable margin, couldn't be caught at the end. Well Defined is a horse that, looking through his past performances, has always been most dangerous when he gets a clear lead, and I'm just not sure that's going to happen here with a horse like Zendin in the race, as well as some other stretch-out types like The Right Path and even Dumph. So Well Defined is a horse that I think has the talent to win this race. I'm just not sure the trip is going to work out for him this time around. I'm interested in both of the Mark Casse horses because I think their running styles fit this race very well. The one that's probably most likely to win of the two is Dreammaker, and I think this horse is probably the one you want to bet in this race if you're looking at a win proposition, because I was really impressed with Dreammaker's most recent victory at the Fairgrounds. I know it was a weaker field. He wasn't facing anywhere near the quality of foes that he's going to meet in this race, but he just won that race in such dominant fashion. I mean, he looked like a much stronger horse than we saw as a 2-year-old, a horse that just really filled out in last fall through the winter months, and he just powered away from that group in the stretch. While the overall quality of that race was somewhat suspect, we have seen 2 runners come back to win out of that race. The second place finisher Courtyard returned to win and run a 3 Timeform US speed figure points higher, and the 4th place finisher came back to win, earning a Timeform US speed figure that was 10 points higher. So I think that speed figure of 114 that Dreammaker earned has totally been validated, and if he runs a similar race here and benefits from a fast pace, I think he is very dangerous. But another horse that I want to use is Mark Casse's other runner, Sir Winston, because while I don't totally trust the form of the Withers, we haven't seen any horses come back to run out of that race yet. It received a suspiciously high speed figure that I really want to see be validated, because it's a little high for all of the runners involved in the race, including Sir Winston. But I just think Sir Winston's running style really fits the likely race flow of this spot, because he was far back in the early going of the Withers, and I thought he ran deceptively well through the stretch that day to get as close as he did to be 4th at the wire, in a race that was mostly dominated towards the front end. Sir Winston is a horse that kind of spent a lot of time trying different surfaces. He ran on turf, he tried the poly track up at Woodbine, but it seems like he's really, or the Tapeta rather, up at Woodbine, but he's really found a home going back to dirt last time out in the Withers. I think that's going to be the surface for him, given that he's a son of Awesome Again. I have a Fleet Alex mare. He really is bred for the dirt, and I just think he's a horse that is going to relish a fast pace ahead of him, will appreciate more distance, and he just could be picking up pieces at the end of this race. I don't think he's quite as likely to win as Dreammaker, but he's likely to be in the 10 to 15 to 1 range, and I think he'll offer value at that kind of price. So I'm picking Dreammaker on top, but I want to use him with his stablemate Sir Winston, as well as Win the likely favorite. So that's a look at the Tampa Bay Derby on Saturday at Tampa Bay Downs. Now let's send it back to the studio.
Time for our best bet segment here on Out of the Gate. Matt, this is what Out of the Gate horse watches are for. Future best bets at nice prices.
And let's hope that this one can connect. Chad seems to win everything as far as turf races are concerned, specifically graded stakes. Hopefully that goes on again Saturday at Tampa. Race number 10, it's the Florida Oaks. Take a look here in the teal silks. That's Lefebvre. She's rolling up very wide right now. This was her stateside debut for Chad Brown. She ran in the Sweetest Chant. This is at a mile distance. She's going to get an extra 1/16 of a mile to work with here on Saturday, and I just like the way that she finishes. She's actually going to go out of the frame and then back into it at the end. I love the way that she's kicking on at the end, and it just makes me think second off the bench, second start with Chad. She's 5 to 1 on the morning line. Let's see if we can get her home.
Mike Beer, NYRA analyst, likes to follow the East Coast tracks. This week, your best bet is at the Fairgrounds with a Midwest replay. Mind blown.
Yeah, we'll see what happens here. Out of the box a little bit, but I wanted to take a shot. This is a 3-year-old filly stakes race on the grass. This is Mandy Blue's debut. This is at Indiana Grand sprinting on the dirt. She was very green early in this race and got outrun. She just kept making up ground into this race. I like the way she finishes at the end. It almost like once she gets clear between these two horses, she really levels off and she gets up at the end of this race. I liked this performance from her. Her second start after this was a mile on the turf at the Fairgrounds, a mile and 16th on the turf at the Fairgrounds, and she took a big step forward. I think turf is what she really wants to do. Brad Cox comes right back into a stakes race with her, and she's 6 to 1 on the morning line. I'll take a shot with her.
I'm going to head on over to Oaklawn, and maybe I'm biting off just a little bit more than I can chew, because the number 1 Whitmore, second in the Breeders' Cup Sprint when last seen, is going to try to win the Hot Springs for the 3rd consecutive year off the layoff, but he's going to have to beat this horse, Share the Upside, who has the recency, and Share the Upside, who was an out-of-the-gate horse watch for me a couple of weeks ago. He popped a 100 Beyer speed figure in this start, his 2nd consecutive win, and he is going away at the end of this race. I have a feeling that Whitmore's trainer is going to be concentrating on having him sound and ready for the big Grade 1 races later this year, and he may not be fully cranked this time around for the Hot Springs. Plus, Share the Upside has more tactical speed than Whitmore. I think he gets the jump on Whitmore in the stretch, and I'll be screaming wire that last 1/16 of a mile, because I know Whitmore will be kicking late. We thank you so much for watching Out of the Gate, and we urge you to follow all of DRF TV's offerings. Please follow on social media at DRF Video, and for the latest news and notes from America's Turf Authority Daily Racing Form, please follow at DRF Inside Post. That's it for this week. Best of luck when your horses break out of the gate.